Hello everyone, thank you once again for joining us. This is English Studies A-Class, and of course today we'll be looking at the topic continuous writing. However, this time around we'll be looking at semi-formal letter writing. And today is Saturday the 17th of November. We'll be looking at this topic, and of course this lesson is actually brought to you courtesy SAMS ESL EFL e-tutorial C. We are based in Nigeria. Again, I am Samuel Ikechukwu Emochogo. It is my pleasure to have you once again. Thank you once again for joining us. You're welcome. Now let's go. First, we'll be looking at the details in terms of our lesson objectives. Okay, so in the course of this lesson, we shall define a semi-formal letter and of course list examples. We shall identify the parts and features of semi-formal letter and of course observe a model of semi-formal letter writing. And of course I'm going to give you an exercise. Alright, now let's delve into the details of this lesson. In terms of semi-formal letter, I want to look at the definition. And so this letter is actually a letter that is written to an adult family friend or a distant senior pen pal, or of course it is also written to an adult acquaintance, an adult that you may actually know but not too close to that adult. Okay, now it has a lot in common with the informal letter but also differs from it in many respects. Okay, now we will certainly take a look at why it is referred to as semi-formal letter. Alright, now in terms of further explanation, the semi-formal letter, like you can see, is also has similarities with both the formal and of course informal letter, and of course that is why the name goes semi-formal letter. So even though the semi-formal is a unique type of letter, it is important to note that there are certain forms of descriptions, okay, when we talk about semi-formal letter. Now let's look at more descriptions. Number one, it is a letter you write to an adult friend, not just to a colleague, not just to one's friend. Okay, and that adult friends could perhaps be a friend of one's parents. Please take note, very important. It could also be a letter written to a former headmistress and or principal. Okay, please take note. Perhaps asking for a reference. All right, so it is actually written, a letter written to either one's parent, a friend of one's parent, or perhaps your former school leaders such as principals or headmistresses. Okay, now quickly let's look at the similarities between a semi-formal letter and of course an informal letter. One, both require only one address, that is the writer's address. So both semi-formal and informal letter require one address. And of course, number two, unlike the formal letter, none requires a heading. Please take note, they do not require a heading. That is a semi-formal letter and of course the informal letter, they do not require a heading. Three, short forms can be used in both, of course in both forms, but then it must be used with moderation in semi-formal letter. What do we mean by short forms? We are talking about contraction of words here. For instance, you have words like can, cannot. Okay, in formal letter this is how you write it, but in both semi-formal letter and informal letter we contract it. That is what I mean by short form, we contract it. Okay, so it has been contracted to can't. Alright, so please take note of this. That's what we mean by the short form. Okay, now quickly let's proceed. More examples. In both exchange of pleasantries of course is allowed in the introductory paragraph, and of course sending greetings in the concluding paragraphs are also allowed, but again it must be brief. It must be brief, like I said earlier, it must be brief in semi-formal letter. And then of course finally, in terms of similarity, number five, the subscription for semi-formal letter is usually yours sincerely. Please take note of this, it's important. It's usually yours sincerely, and of course this is also used in informal letter writing. This is also used in informal letter writing. And again, six, both require the writer's first name only. Both require the writer's first name only. okay, after subscription. And again, it is important to note that no subscription, I mean no signature is needed in either type. Okay, no signature is actually needed in either type. Now let's proceed further. Examples of semi-formal letter will always include the following. Now the question in terms of an examination situation will appear like this: you were involved in an accident while traveling home from school. A certain Dr. Jones took you to hospital and cared for you for many days until you returned to your family. Write a letter to Dr. Jones thanking him for his kindness. This is the nature of a semi-formal letter. So when a question appears like this, it's actually a semi-formal letter. All right, now the next one, the question could also appear this way: you have been asked to write to a well-known author, inviting him to come and speak at one of your school's debate. Okay, now this is also an example of a semi-formal letter in an examination situation. And then of course number 3, it could come this way: your family has been passing through a lot of economic hardship. Write a letter to a well-known philanthropist in your community requesting him to come to your family's assistance. Okay, now this is an example of a semi-formal letter. Now in all, you realize that the writer writes to an adult acquaintance. Okay, to an adult acquaintance, not just to his mate. All right, now that takes us to the next point: parts of a semi-formal letter. Very important. The semi-formal letter has same 5 parts that informal letter has. The following of these parts will of course reveal some differences between the 2 types of letters. Now let's look at number 1, the heading. Okay, as with the informal letter, this refers to the writer's address and of course the date. Now the next point is the salutation. Interestingly, for informal letter, we could have dear dad, we could have something like this. Okay, in terms of salutation, dear dad, it can appear like this as your salutation in informal letter, dear uncle, and so on and so forth. However, in semi-formal letter writing, the salutation is usually like this: dear, the person's title and his surname. Dear Mr. Fred. Okay, as you can see here, dear Mr. Fred. The next one, dear Professor Edward. The next one, dear Madam Kayode. And of course, you have dear Chief Namdi. All right, so you observe something here which is very important. In semi-formal letter writing, you have your dear plus the person's title and then the person's surname. So that is what the salutation in semi-formal writing looks like. Now the next one is the body. The body, as you can see, in the case of semi-formal letter, one writes to someone who is older, like we've always noted in the course of this lesson. Someone who is not your friend and someone who is not too familiar with the writer. Therefore, the language, while being sufficiently conversational, is not too familiar. It must show appropriate respect. Slangs must be avoided, and of course, on the other hand, formal language is not used. All right, everything is actually done in moderation. Again, so formal language is actually not used. Slang is actually not used, so everything is done in moderation. All right, now complementary clause. Let's take a look at the complementary clause. It is actually written this way. All right, yours sincerely. Yours sincerely. What you notice here, capital letter Y in yours, but small letter S in sincerely. Again, notice that in yours, as you can see there, the dictionary does not allow this. In fact, it is not allowed in English language. You can't find this in any English dictionary. Rather, the correct one is without apostrophe. Please take note, the correct one is usually without an apostrophe. All right, now let's proceed. Let's proceed with our example so far. Now the next one is actually the closing. Now in the closing we'll have something like this. With the informal letter, of course, you use your first name or nickname only in closing. Okay, but then in semi-formal letter, the writer is expected to use his full name and never, remember, never a nickname. Please take note, never a nickname. The writer must take note of this. Never a nickname. It is not allowed. Example, John Obot. Okay, so now let's take a look at a model, and thereafter we shall call it a day. Here is a model I have. Now my model goes like this. Potter's Touch High School, Yenagua, Bayelsa State, 5th December 2022. Dear Mr. Musa, look at the title of that person, Musa Kama. Okay, as the secretary of our school debating club, I am arranging a series of debates for the spring term. I have been requested by the committee to ask you if you would kindly accept to be our guest speaker at one of the debates. Our club has a large and enthusiastic membership, and we sometimes allow relatives and friends to attend our debates, which are held in our modern school theater. Several of our members have had the pleasure of listening to your speeches and would be most grateful if you could spare the time to come and visit us. Okay, our debates are held on the last Friday of each month, so you may wish to suggest a convenient date and a suitable topic. Again, I shall look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. All right, now yours sincerely, Moses Osakwe. Here is an example of what a semi-formal letter looks like. Please take a look at this. This is actually what a semi-formal letter looks like. It's important you look at it. Very, very important. All right, thank you. And here is a simple task for us. Write out 3 informal and 3 semi-formal letter questions and practice writing the salutation for both forms of the letter. Alright, this is a simple task for you, and I hope it will be done and submitted within the next 3 to 4 days. Alright, at this point, I want to say thank you very much for listening. It's been a nice time having a meeting with you. Thank you, and thank you once again. I'll be coming your way next time. Until now, I have to sign out. Thank you very much. Remain blessed. Please kindly subscribe our YouTube channel. Thank you and stay blessed. Bye for now.